Let's see if it posts. Okay, we are officially live. This is S.R. Morey with Thoughts for Your Thoughts. Parks and Rec quote most people won't understand. All right, so we're with Jake Tilford here, and he is someone who has read my previous writing. And here in a minute, we're going to ask him questions about his thoughts on my previous writing, which is, by the way, those of you that are watching this later on, the first book I wrote is available as an add-on item on the website that I'm about to show off. Here it is. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's professionally formatted. This camera's in reverse, so I always show it wrong. And let me just retweet this so that it actually gets some eyes on it, because right now nobody is looking at it. And that's kind of problematic. I actually greatly despise Twitter, like being on Twitter, because I just don't like it. Twitter's not the real world, you know? Twitter's like crazy. People lose their minds. People lose their minds on Twitter. All right. Okay, so let's look at this thingamajig. Let's look at this campaign. And, okay. Can you see my screen? And I'm like a little small piece in the corner.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the Indiegogo campaign for those of you that might drop in at some point. We are doing pretty good. We're at 57 backers. The goal for printing the books, this is the cost for just printing the books, is $3,000, and we are 84% there. We have 11 days left, and the day count starts at like 6 p.m. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. it will be like 10 days, right? And yeah, let's get into it. So as a little summary, which will go on the back of the book, we have a chapter sample, which you've actually already read from being a patron member. It was that battle that Narbad is in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's Narbad. Yeah, I told he's a Russian. I said, make Sean Bean into an orc. And he did it. This is just kind of some information. This is what the cover is going to look like. This is the finished product. Obviously, these white lines won't be there, but that is what it will look like. And it will be the same dimensions as the Sylvan Mist, kind of like this Game of Thrones book I have here. So it'll be the same dimensions this way, but will actually be about as thick as this Game of Thrones book. So it's quite a bit bigger than the Sylvan Mist, which allowed for more space to work with the spine to give a more appealing design. Then a little bit lower, I have the map, which I drew myself. Had to drive into Ohio to get it scanned because coronavirus. FedEx was like, we can't do it. We can't touch anything that you have touched. I was like, okay. These are all the tiers. If you remember with the Sylvan Mist, I had a bunch of tiers. I don't know if you were there for that part, but yeah, there's tiers, add-on items, just kind of explaining things. I'll go into the tiers here. Here's a personality quiz. So again, someone can click this. They can take this quiz, and if they tag what? It has not ended. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we're going to have to get that fixed because they charged me money for it. So anyway, that's embarrassing. I will look at that right after the campaign is done because that, you know what, maybe they changed the link. Anyway, I'll have to update that. But there's Zach Bonebreaker. He's another character in this book. He's my favorite, to be honest. All right, so we have, to start us out, we have the featured package, which comes with the ebook, the physical book, the visual companion, and a nice big sticker of Narbad die cut, so it's in the shape of him. Then we have going down from cheapest to most expensive. Ragni's Mace is the ebook. Bofflin's Hammer is the physical book. Narbad's Axes is the ebook, physical book, and a sticker. Talia's Courage is, who, by the way, this is Talia right here. Comes with the ebook, physical book, sticker, and a nice big fat print of the cover art, which, as you can see, is gorgeous. Tima's Blades package, you get the book, the visual companion, and you get to pick 5 of the following art pieces as prints. And I don't know if I said ebook, but you get that too. Family bundle, you get 3 Narbad stickers, ebook, 3 copies of the book, 3 mugs, cover print, and I think a visual companion. Neris's Horde comes with 2 copies of the book, the ebook, the visual companion, or it might be 2 copies of the visual companion, mug, Narbad sticker, probably 2 Narbad stickers. I'll be generous. Cover print, map print, and this hoodie right here, which I do have over there somewhere. I'm not wearing it right now. I'm usually wearing it, but it's a little dirty, so I'm not going to wear it tonight. And then lastly, the Gesu package is definitely on steroids this time. You get everything from the campaign. That includes the original sketch cards by artist Vic King, the 2 physical books, 2 stickers, 2 mugs, 2 visual companions. But the big part about the Gesu package is you will be written into the book as a minor character. You can decide within reason their name. Like if you're a dwarf, your character name can't be Scuttlebud. But, you know, you can decide if they live or die, and we can kind of work out the details there. But the big thing is you will have a page dedicated to your character in the visual companion, and I will have a willing artist draw your character to go into the visual companion. So that is the Indiegogo campaign. I totally forgot to put it in the description of this video, so I'm going to post it in the chat after I put my face back on. Okay, let me drop that in the chat. I think this will work. Okay. We have some interactions on Twitter, but not too many. Again, you know, with my live streams, it's really more people watch it afterwards. Okay. All right. So, questions. So, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty all right, I would say. I'm excited. That preview that I got right there, going through each of the packages, that stirred me a little bit. I'm interested.
You're
Some
intrigued.
of those. I'm intrigued, very.
Well, that's good. That tells me that I did my job. Yeah, you're living the high life. You are done for now until like the fall, and you'll move on to college, which you kind of already are in, kind of. But, you know, you're done with high school. I was at the thing last night. It started raining. It was kind of miserable.
Oh, nice.
But I was there. I did it. I was kind of hoping that Mr. Middendorf would be there, but he was not there. So I was just kind of there.
Chilling out.
You know, you're just like all the cars. There's like, no joke, like 70 cars, and you're like clapping and you're like waving. And you're like, yeah, good job. And then they go right that way. And then they came back around. So we had to go through the whole line like twice. And some people don't know how to drive over speed bumps. So feel like these wide gaps in between the cars.
Nice. That's always.
But yeah, weird times. The Corona apocalypse. Weird times.
Oh, yeah.
Weird times.
We're getting by.
Getting by. Yeah, how's quarantine?
It's driving me insane.
Getting stir crazy.
Oh my goodness. I'd do anything to get out of this house.
I've gone to Kroger once. And I went to the Ohio to scan the map.
Yeah.
I think other than going for walks, that's the only time I've left the house.
Yeah.
You know, other than like mowing the yard and stuff.
It's a change.
There was like when I went to scan the map, the woman was like sheepish around me. I was like, girl, I haven't at that point I was like, this is the first time I've left the house in like a month. So you don't have to be afraid. If anything, I should be afraid of you. All right. You
Can you
any
repeat that for
book.
me?
So whenever you are in a bookstore, what draws your attention to a book?
I would say
What makes you pick up a book?
definitely. I've always been more of a fan of like the cleaner, the more slate colored like bridges of the book, um, or spines, I guess you would say. But like bold name, you see that, and then you pick it up, and the cover art just grabs you instantly. You're intrigued. You're like, what is going on here? And you flip to the back. You're trying to find out like what any information possible, and it leaves you on a cliffhanger. That right there is what draws me in. It's like I have to figure out what's going on.
So the initial thing is the spine, and then the full cover, and then the description on the back.
Yeah.
You know what ticks me off is whenever you pick up a book and on the back, it's not a description. It's just like quotes or like a list of the author's accomplishments.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't tell me anything about the story. I want to know what's going on in the story. You know? So yeah, I think that's a good answer. And to be honest with you, for me, I've noticed that books nowadays kind of have more of like this. You know, it's not an illustration at all. It's just like a picture with a very simple background, you know. It is classy. It is. But I've always been a fan of like the artwork, you know, like the epic
of like Salvador. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, for those watching, this is I hate this camera. This is the size comparison of the books. This is a standard mass market paperback, and this is the size of my books. So it's a bit bigger. It's a very unique size that is a big reason why I made Mistwood Publishing, because I wanted that size specifically, and things like Amazon just don't offer that. So yeah, I've always been more of a artwork kind of draws my attention, but the Martin one looks classy too.
Yeah.
So once you've picked up a book and you've started reading it, what keeps your attention? What keeps you going? What keeps you reading? Like for me, or an example, give you time to kind of compose your thoughts. What keeps me reading is, and I've discovered this about myself recently, is it needs to be fast paced. You know, like there needs to be something moving the plot forward. So like, for example, I can plow through this book in a few days, especially if it's the first time I'm reading it. Now that I've read it many times, not so much, but it's been a while since I've read this one, so I'll probably plow through it pretty quickly. In high school, I read these things in like a day, even though they're like 400 pages. And I know that you love Martin, but I'm struggling with this book. I'm struggling, man.
Yeah.
Bran bores me to tears. You know?
I usually skip those chapters, I'm not gonna lie.
I skim Bran's chapters, and I'm like, his whole chapter is one conversation.
Yes.
See, I'm still gonna read this because I love Game of Thrones, and I love learning from Martin because I think he's very talented. But if he didn't have this name, you know, if this was just some random person, I probably would have stopped reading, right? There was, I can't even remember the name of the book, but there was somebody that, you know, he doesn't have a big, you know, J.R.R. Tolkien or George R. R. Martin name, and their book was so slow, I gave up on it. I was like, I can't. It was like, no joke, 300 pages in, and nothing had happened yet. I was like, where is this going? So that's, for me, what keeps my attention is a quick moving plot, but it's different for everybody, and everybody's reasons are equally valid. So what for you keeps you drawn in?
The number one thing that like keeps me like I have to keep going on is the character development. And it's I will use the Sylvan Mist as an example with Aelion, how he goes from being just a boy
Mm-hmm.
essentially, and you travel with him through thick and thin. Like he dies, and you're with him, and you become him in a sense. You feel the same thing he does. He has humanity to you.
Right, he's very human.
Yeah, and you almost root for him. I'm not going to say almost. I rooted for him. I wanted him to receive what was given to him in his due time.
So would you say a good, compelling main character is pretty important?
That main character, side character, every character you meet, I believe, should have a role to play in the grand scheme.
I think from what my editors have said, they said that the Veil of Stars next book, that's something that I did really well, is that each character has a very compelling reason for being there, and like a very emotionally impactful reason for being there. So yeah, that's good to hear that that's important. Character development is indeed key. Got to have, especially the main character. And I'm actually glad that you said Elion, because for whatever reason, main characters get no love. They just don't. Like, I'll ask people, like, what's your favorite character? And they'll be like, Terran. I'm like, I love Terran. But like, no, like, it's fine if like one or two people are like, yeah, I love Terran. But like nobody says Elion. I'm like, he's like the main guy. But I get it, because I kind of do the same thing. I usually don't pick the main character as my favorite either. But that being said, Jon Snow is my favorite Game of Thrones character.
Yeah. Going off on that as well, like the list of favorite characters for me, it's always main character number one. If I am reading your book, I am loving that main character. That's what keeps me on. I want to finish his journey, his or her journey. And the second best part that I look forward to is the enemy, like that grand evil, like Mirkuva, the spider. And that villain was just so interesting to me. It's like in DC, like Scarecrow, like insane and like pure evil in a sense. And like to me, it was just like there's no way that this one man can do this
right
by himself.
So you like impossible odds, and then the hero having to overcome that.
Yeah,
that's a big thing for me. Like, that's one reason why I love DC movies so much, is because there's really that they do a good job of kind of building that. Like in Man of Steel, you're like, yeah, he's Superman, but he's fighting like 9 other Kryptonians. And like, I know he's going to win, but like, how's he going to do it? Or like, I don't know, in case of Batman vs. Superman, he dies, right? They're a hero is only as good as their villain, the saying. So yeah, Mirkuva I had a lot of fun with her. She had that hallucinogenic powder.
Yeah.
And all of that. And yeah, I mean, Narbad almost gets it then too. And that's not even going up against her.
That whole sequence of chapters was insane.
I gotta say, since having read the Sylvan Mist, which won't really disrupt your enjoyment of this book at all, it's really fun to see Narbad when he's young, and the level of growth that he goes through in this book is exceptional. Like, he grows so much, and him and this character named Talia are probably, I think, the 2 most emotionally compelling characters. And you know me, some characters have to die, so there's that too.
Yeah.
So, expect that. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, there was a question I thought. Oh, yes. So with villains, what are you more drawn to? Like the ultimate evil, like the White Walkers, or the complex, not black and white evil, like Cersei?
Well, for show, like if it was in a show, I would watch it for like the more presentable White Walker sense. But in literature, I kind of view it as like high class.
Right.
So I always look for like how are they evil in a not presented way? What do they do that makes them who they are, and why do they think that way?
Right. So complex. Because, like
Yeah,
Sauron and the White Walkers really are just kind of like they don't talk. There's just kind of like absolute evil, right?
yeah,
And I mean, I personally also, in the show sense, really like the White Walkers because they look freaking awesome. Um, even though they never even drew their sword once in the
I
last.
know.
But you know, Cersei and that more complex, not black and white, I think is also very interesting. I will say my villains in the Sylvan Mist are pretty black and white evil, but at the same time they're not.
It's
Like
more. I agree with that. I do.
more
I'm
like a
sorry for interrupting you.
Saruman. Like they're
Yeah,
more like a Saruman. Like they're straight up
yeah,
evil, but they're more complex than just like, oh, Sauron, he's just evil because whatever, you know? And in this upcoming book, the villains, there's pretty much 4 villains, but also 2. It's I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of complex, but they're all manipulating each other. They're basically all playing Cersei on each other,
yeah,
but they're all doing like Sauron slash Saruman on the heroes,
yeah.
Um, but the epilogue in Saga 1, I rewrote it. I added a new thing, and it's setting up this big storyline that's going to take place mostly in Saga 2, but by Saga 3, it's going to be what the whole book is about. And it's basically the 2 princes of Hanor, which is a country I've alluded to a lot in the Sylvan Mist and in this book as well. And it's going to be some straight up full on Littlefinger politics. And I'm
Yeah.
actually very proud of myself because writing politics is so hard because it's not in my makeup to be Cersei. So it's really hard for me to think of real situations. I mean, of course, Martin took it all from, the War of Roses pretty much,
Yeah.
but still, there's a lot of craft in there. Definitely. So, specific to fantasy, what do you look for most in a story aside from the characters? What kind of plots kind of interests you?
So my like favorite style of writing that I've not found that gets presented the way I would want it to is I want like yeah, the heroes are nice and all, but like the villains have the win to be villains. Like and you always have the reasons for like, oh, they're evil, they did this, but it's never represented. And
Right.
like you never actually get to fully engrave yourself into that scenario where the villains come out on top and the heroes are defeated.
Well, I think you'll like Saga 3. It sounds like Saga 3 and 4 are going to be right up your alley.
Yeah.
It gets very dark, which is hinted at in the Sylvan Mist. If you pay attention to Narbat and Zip's conversations, you kind of get the sense that the
Yeah.
pre-events were pretty horrible in certain ways. I will say Saga 2 is pretty, for me at least, my writing, it's pretty lighthearted. Um, but there's also more than one plot going on in Saga 2. There's like 4 different plots going on. And one of them is like a gladiator fight sort of thing, which I've always wanted to do, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. So much blood, so much violence. So your story is kind of interesting because, at first, when you first discovered me, you were not my student,
Yeah.
and I like learned from Matt that there was a student at Boone that wanted to do like a project on my book, and I was like what? And I was really taken aback and I won't lie, I like came home and told Sarah like project, and there have been a few students that have gotten into my to the extent that you have. I would name you and Alex Messer, who I had on last week. I would probably name both of you probably my biggest fans. So I guess my question is, what is it about my writing specifically that sets it apart? Like, what's special about it?
Everything in a way.
It's a hard question.
That's my first instinct to say everything, because you do like I can see the similarities in your writing between like Salvatore, as you said, and like Tolkien in a sense, and then like just you weave these together and like create this ultimate like style that you have wanted. Like by piecing
Right.
together these things, you show how you interpreted them,
Right.
and it's a very personal style of writing.
Yeah.
And with
I kind of try that way. Yeah.
yeah, and like with Martin, I kind of feel as if he writes to be the best, and he's pretty good, but like he loses that lack of personality.
Right. Personability. Really like connecting with the characters in a very personal way. That is very important to me. I think Salvatore does a good job with that. Tolkien's kind of the same way as Martin in that sense. When you read his books, The Lord of the Rings, that's like literature.
Yeah,
And so it does kind of also have that disconnect, but at the same time, like you still do connect with his characters. Like Faramir, he
yeah,
is like you love that guy in the book. Like I feel like even Boromir in the book, you love him a bit more because there's that development.
yeah.
And you also appreciate Frodo a lot more
Oh yeah,
because you get to like see what he's actually struggling with in a way that the movie can't really do. Like when he's climbing Mount Doom, it's like, well, first of all, like talks about the actual physical weight of the ring, like all these things. But yeah, the older I get, the more I realize it really is. My books are kind of like if you took the blood and gore of Game of Thrones, but that's really it from Game of Thrones, and you combined it with R.A. Salvatore's character development and combat style, and then put the combat style on steroids. And then like Tolkien's, I think world is very similar, and his nature descriptions and emphasis on natural descriptions. One editor was like, I love how the weather always matches your character's moods. I'm like, well, it's just winter during the
yeah.
book. That's really all it is. But yeah, so I'm glad that it comes across personal because that is ultimately the goal. I think that relating to the characters is ultimately probably the most important thing because if you don't care about the character, whenever they're hurt, you don't care, and then you're bored,
Yeah.
right? So that's good to hear. It's good to hear. So you kind of already answered this, but you said, is Elion your favorite character, or is there somebody else you like more?
Definitely Aelion. I'd say runner up would be Roy.
Yeah, a lot of people like Roy, and I think that's not a coincidence because Roy and Elion are both very heavily inspired off of my own personality, and Elion's like the better half, like the half that would do good, and Roy is like the half that would be jealous and maybe be a little bit more on the darker side.
Yeah.
So what draws you to, and you might have already answered this a little bit, but what draws you to Elion as a favorite character?
He's human is the biggest thing. Like he's half elf,
He's literally
But like, yeah, but he's someone that you would meet in real life and like talk with them. Like he feels love, he feels hate, he feels all of these emotions, and like sometimes they get the better of him, and that happens to each and every one of us.
it's
And
true.
like it's that how he keeps going on is resemblant of like life in a way, and that is probably like the reason why it's like he is the star whenever I read it.
I really like that somebody has said that well, you're not the first to say that they're your favorite, but it is rare that people say
Yeah,
the main character is their favorite. I think they're afraid for some reason of liking the main character, but that's really good because Elion really is very human and he has gone through a lot of crap. And I think it's going to be in Saga 4, but you will actually get to see like his origin where his parents are like murdered and stuff from Narbad's perspective. But that will be in a book. I just haven't written it yet.
yeah.
So you get to enjoy that. So what about Roy? Kind of a similar thing.
Very similar, but like he also has like a background noise of like he could do anything. Like if he wanted to, he could do anything that he wanted to, and probably no one would be able to stop him. Like
That
he
is
has that like just a idea of what he wants, and like he'll get it no matter what, in a sense.
Yeah, something Alex said, because Roy is Alex's favorite character, and something he said is that Roy doesn't really get so much unless it's with Urshka involved, but he doesn't get like he doesn't let his emotions and the well, maybe not the emotions, but the current circumstance to get in the way of him looking at the current situation from a practical perspective of
Yeah,
like, yes, this sucks, but we just need to suck it up and what do we got to do to get it done? And then let's
yeah,
do it. So that's what Alex kind of listed, and he also his favorite character is Jamie from Game of Thrones, so it kind of makes sense
yeah.
that he would like Roy.
I could see that. Yeah,
I feel like they're in that similar category, which I didn't plan this, but there is a character named Ruth in this story, which is, I mean, he's not Jamie and he's not Roy, but he's that guy that some people are gonna hate and some people are gonna love.
yeah,
Like my last editor absolutely hated Ruth. Every time he would say something against Narbad, which happens a lot, she would like write in the margin like, "Oh, shut up. You suck." And then but my sister Emily, Ruth was her favorite.
yeah,
Um and I definitely expand. There is definitely a reason why he is a butthead. And I think it's a very sympathetic like you sympathize with him a lot, but he is also a butthead. Not that Roy's necessarily a butthead, but he toes that line.
yeah.
Um so let's see. What are your thoughts on the Veil of Stars campaign that you had just witnessed and its art? I'll show you the visual companion here in a
Yeah.
second.
Very intrigued, like I did say before, like super like into the whole thing. I'm excited to like how is this going to grow and develop as well, like because this is a big step from the first book,
Oh yeah.
and if all of these are being made, what's going to happen whenever the next one comes around? Like it can only go up in that sense.
Yeah, I will say this plot is more global. Like you're gonna actually experience a lot more of the other religions that are in the world. You're gonna see a lot more cities than just the Immortal Forest. Like the
Hmm.
Silver Mist was really kind of like self-contained, and I really like that about it. But I also want to tell global stories as well.
Yeah,
And so this story is a lot more broad strokes. And then Saga 2 will actually become even more broad. And in fact, in Saga 2, you go to a whole nother continent for one of the storylines that people haven't seen yet. It's kind of like the land where everybody lived before Ragnarok.
Yeah.
That story that Gildor tells Elion while they're drinking tea, which I kind of incorporated that into this story as well with Narbad and his grandfather. It's cute. I think people will like it. But let's look at the cover art because I want you. I don't think you've been able to see like a close up of the cover art because it is gorgeous. It is so gorgeous. All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's zoom in. So if you remember from the Sylvan Mist, the Ormriller, which were like troll bodies with moray eel heads.
Hey, yeah. I'm on the phone. All right.
All right, we won't be too much
I'm
longer.
sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. We won't be too much longer. So yeah, now this is a young one. They can get a lot bigger than this. But like at one point in the story, there is an orc that gets like eaten in half from this thing's mouth. So yeah, this is like a teenager Ormriller. It's not fully grown yet.
Yeah.
And here we have a Lif. I know like in the book it describes them as having like almost translucent skin and like a black skull structure underneath, but you can't really get that in a book cover where, I mean, we're zooming in a lot, so it's not realistic for me to ask that of the illustrator. But you can see there's a Lif, there's a Lif. This is a very small Wendigo, but he's technically still a Wendigo. You can see the tusks and the mane. There's a Lif. Here's a Lif, there's a Lif. This is probably the best looking Wendigo in my opinion.
Yeah.
He looks mean. And this is Is, who is one of the villains. He's one of Vandir's sons. Then we'll go over one thing I really love about R.A. Salvatore's book covers is that there's always violence and there's like blood.
Yeah.
And so that was really important to me because, of course, The Thousand Orcs is what brought my attention to actually reading fantasy in the first place. So, come on. What's going on with my computer? Come on. So this is Ruth. This is that guy I was saying is a butthead sometimes. And he's got a shield and sword. I think it's a very practical design. And he's kind of like the Prince of Grendel, which is kind of like the capital of all high elves. And his sister is Talia. This is a character I think people will really identify with. And for those that are like, her armor's not practical, trust me, it's addressed in the book, and it is practical. It's not everything that it appears to be. Now, her sword is actually made of aramethil, which is kind of like my mithril. And I know you can't really, because again, to go into this much detail on something that you can zoom out that far on would be ridiculous. But her sword, these are lion heads, which bite the blade with their teeth. And it's made by, well, I'll just say Terran does make an appearance in this book. Yeah. He's very young, but he's in the book. And here we have Narbad. I would like to think that he's decapitated this guy, and now he's Spartan kicking him. Looks very good. And yeah, this is the book cover. I'm not going to talk about how much it costs because it hurts. And
very well done.
Yeah, there's a lot of snow in this book, so it was very important to me that it had a very wintry vibe. Since one of the villains is like the demon god of ice and winter. And then, of course, there's the graphic design. And then I'll show you the visual companion, which has a ton of awesome art on it. Yeah, so I really like the graphic design. And it continues with the style of the Sylvan Mist.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm doing differently with this book, and part of why the cost of printing is so much higher, is because one thing I didn't like about the Sylvan Mist was when I read it a lot, the finish started to peel a little bit. Not a lot,
Yeah.
but enough to where it was noticeable. And that really bothered me. So this finish is not going to peel. Because instead of a lamination, aqueous, I think is how you pronounce it, dirty, like with this book. So it's really nice. Very nice. All right, let's see this visual companion. Let's do Inception. So this is the software that I'm using to make the visual companion. And it could all blow up in my face. We'll see. We'll see. Are you kidding me? Okay, well, as long as it's not an update. And so, yep, it is an update. Well, it's going quickly. You know, that's the thing about a live stream. You can't really plan these things like that. I guess I could have had it open beforehand, but
That's
you
just too
know,
much
it
for
is what it is. Error. Well, that's a bunch of bonehead. It had better work eventually because I need it. Well, you know, we don't really need the visual companion to look at it. I have all the art, of course, just on file. It just looks a lot nicer in the visual companion altogether. All right, well, plan B. Let's just look at the art this way. Okay, so there are 2 dwarf characters in the book. Well, main dwarf characters. There's a lot more dwarves than just 2, but 2 that you really get to know. First is Bothlin. He wields a 2-handed hammer. And this is in the visual companion. There he is drawn again in color. Although it just went a lot more, it just lost a lot of the color for some reason. That's weird. So the cover again. Here is actually, you'll like this a lot. This is Nelid Selethor, who is Elion's uncle. So you'll get to meet Elion's uncle. And this is Aline, who is kind of like his student, if you will. He's actually, if you remember in the Silver Mist, Mogdurig has been captured by Mirkuva.
Yeah.
Well, in this book, this is before that. So in its heyday, Mogdurig was actually a military school for elves, and he's one of the instructors for longsword fighting. He's got a pretty cool backstory as well. And he is still around during the Silver Mist. You just haven't met him yet. That's early work on Narbad. This is one of the villains. His name is Deflorgak, and he is the fully evolved form of a Wendigo. So this is what Wendigos look like in Native American mythology, and they love to eat people's hearts. He is quite diabolical, and the scene where he gets transformed into this is probably one of the most disturbingly gory things I've ever written. There's Eileen again. That's a sketch of Narbad, Ruth, and Talia. This is another sketch of Is, the main villain, and this is also going to be inside of the book, like inside of the actual like novel. Kind of like how that sketch of Mirkuva was in the Silver Mist. This won't be at the beginning where the Mirkuva one is, but it will be in the book. I'll show you the one that will be at the beginning because it's awesome. This is another villain named Karam. He's a lich. And he's probably my favorite out of the villains because he's awesome. And he's very complicated. He's very much so politically manipulative and always has a backup plan. This is Linod. He is a cleric who has some pretty intense fire-based abilities. One thing about this book is the Silver Mist is actually pretty light on magic because there is a big event that takes place in between this book and the Silver Mist, which changes magic a lot. But magic in this book with this guy and his Yari staff is pretty intense. So this is what's going at the beginning of the book where the Mirkuva art is in the Sylvan Mist. It is a antlered monkey. I got the idea from Michael Scott. because they're talking about religion, and he's like, what if we put the head of a monkey on the body of a boar with the antlers of a deer? And I was like, antlered monkey. I like it. But it's actually a very important animal to the plot. There's a really big moment with Narbad. As soon as the reader reads that scene, they'll understand exactly why I put the monkey there. Narbad, another copy of that. This is Nelid again, Elion's uncle. Not that Elion really looks like him, but they're similar. That's a sketch. So this is another one of the villains, and I know that some people will judge me rather harshly as soon as they see this. But that's actually kind of part of the point of the character. There is a story, a biblical story of a prostitute coming in and dumping perfume on Jesus's feet, and everybody was reacting all the disciples were reacting very intensely. And Jesus was like, have you done this for me? Like, who are you to judge? And so that's kind of one of the points of this book is Narbad's an orc. He's looked down upon as less than. Talia is not very good at fighting in the beginning, and so she's looked down upon. And Neris here, who's one of the villains, is looked down upon because she kind of screwed the entire continent like several thousand years ago. And so people don't like her. And it kind of draws a point on like our own conclusions. We tend to judge people without giving them a fair chance. And I know some people will really hate that artwork and some people will really love it. But she's she's actually my favorite villain, not because of the appearance, but because she's very complicated and very unpredictable. This is Ragni. He is my comic relief. He trips on his beard, he farts, and he talks very funny, which, by the way, all my dwarves have Scottish accents, in case it wasn't obvious. This is Tima. She's kind of like, I guess, kind of like Roy. She is an assassin, quiet, strong, silent type. And here's a little bit of the visual companion, kind of like what it looks like on the inside. I think that's all of the artwork. Yeah, this is still realizing that it failed. Let's see if I open it up again, if it will fix. Maybe I'll have to like restart the computer or something. I'll have to fix it at some point. Yes. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up. I know you probably have things to do. Hope that you enjoyed that. Oops. Oh, that's not what we want. There I am. There we go. So, yeah, that's part of the visual companion. At least the art separated. I mean, I can't emphasize enough. The visual companion looks very classy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it failed to update again. I'm going to have to fix that. Well, any closing thoughts?
I'm excited. That's really it right there. It's just I'm really looking forward to having this book in my hands and reading through it.
It's going to be gorgeous. I hope to have it out for people that order it, of course, like around June at the latest. I'm reading it for I'm going through my last edit of it right now to finish it up. My last run through. Then it'll be formatted, which I don't know if you noticed, but let me share my screen again. I know that's silly. So much technology, you know. I am a millennial. Well, that doesn't mean I'm amazing with technology. So it might be kind of hard to see once I share my screen. But this axe, 2 axes in the circle, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So that is Narbad's like war sigil, if you will. And at the beginning of each chapter, you know, below the title and the chapter 3 or whatever, this will be there for each beginning of the chapter. It's going to look very nice. And if you remember in the Sylvan Mist, every time there was a scene change, there'd be like a little sword.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and see if I can't get it to where instead of the sword, it's like three little small versions of these. So I think that would be classy. Like it would be really classy. All right. All right. Well, it was good seeing you. Feel like I haven't seen
Yeah,
you
of
in
course.
so long. It's crazy.
Been a while.
Been a long time. And you're not a student anymore, really.
I know. It's awesome.
So there's no conflict of interests or anything like that. All right. Well, we're gonna have to keep in touch, especially now
Yeah,
that
of course.
you're no longer taboo for me to interact with. So
Oh yeah.
you have a good night. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime. It was fun.
All right. We're gonna end the live stream. It won't take you off. You know, we can separate after that. But everybody that's listening or who watched or watches after it's posted, you guys have a lovely night. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got a taste of, my writing's not terrible at the very least. It's actually pretty good. And you don't have to take my word for it. Have a lovely night. Peace out and take care.